Hey guys, welcome to DiceCasters. I'm Rob.
James.
Blake.
And today we are talking about dungeons.
Like 50 Shades of Grey dungeons and stuff?
Whoa.
Exactly.
No, I don't want to hear about your sex life, Blake.
I'm at the wrong place.
Maybe you can hear about that kind of dungeons up next. And now we're back. So, okay, about dungeons. What's a dungeon?
A dungeon is basically designed encounters of just like you go down here, or like what's a good way to describe this? A bunch of adventurers go down into a dungeon to seek treasure they've never, or great treasure they heard of at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
They go down in there, they meet new types of factions or races, they encounter traps, they encounter undead, they encounter a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Basically, it's it's like an environment to have a quest in. Basically, like you staying in that environment for the whole quest, because a dungeon doesn't necessarily have to be brick and stone. It can be like an Amazon forest
or a desert biome where you have to try to weasel your way out of. A good movie that would be like, this is a perfect D&D dungeon would be The Goonies.
Like
they get like the map, they go down to this thing, they fight, they do some swashbuckling action, and they get shit out the back end of it. Like, that's a dungeon.
And there always seems to be a quick exit too.
Yes, because the last thing you want to do is, like, it's either that or you go, alright, so then you guys walk out, which is also anticlimactic. It's always better to end like on that zing as opposed to be like, alright, then we leave.
I blame Skyrim for that.
Pretty much any game like that.
Yeah.
I think Dark Souls, like the entire game of the Dark Souls, is just the perfect dungeon, because it's not like even your hub
really
area.
Pacific.
It's like part of the dungeon. Like it wraps around. Like, everything connects to each other in some way, shape, or form eventually, and like it just feels like the perfect dungeon, because like one environment will lead to something completely different, and it's like feels natural at the same time.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when I think of, like, natural stuff, I think of pretending you're an egg so an eagle will pick you up and take you to a castle.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, but that makes sense, because the eagle took you there.
Why did he take you there? Why would he, if he thought you were an egg?
You're really good at convincing being an egg.
This is what he went, and pick up my egg. You're not an egg.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you to a castle.
Fuck yeah.
That's coming from someone who only watches Let's Plays of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So completely out of context, it's just hilarious of seeing a naked man sit there with a club pretending to be an egg. Anyway, dungeons.
You can actually do that in Dark Souls 2, also. But not 3.
A lot of games have great dungeons. Bloodborne, another From Software game, has the Chalice dungeons, which I've always kind of wanted to make. Just like you can literally go on to Fextra Life or something, find the entire dungeon layout and just copy and paste. I've always wanted to kind of do that, and maybe make some minor changes to it.
Right.
But yeah, I think like a good dungeon has extremes in one form or another that flow together naturally, either whether that's like environment or whether that's conflicts. Like, like you're exploring the dungeon, you're fighting these things, and then there happens to be this child that you find that he says that he's been lost and trapped there forever, and you're like, oh, I should try to help you out, but wait, forever? He's been here for way longer than he should have to be still alive. He's part of the dungeon. He's trying to trick you, and it's like a trap.
That usually implies a will save.
Yeah. But like, where something, I don't know. It can kind of things kind of go from like one extreme to the next, and like
you can go from like
manner.
I always liked it when we did a few dungeons in your Flat World campaign.
Yes, I have.
And it seemed to be like we went through. The one that I remember in particular was the one where we were all sliding down.
Yes, the tunnels.
And like my character, the rogue, had no problem getting down them, and then the knight, who has no like balance checks or anything, just like tumble down with somebody like trying to help them.
Yeah, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you. And that person's like, I can do better. I can do better. And they're just slamming into walls all along this tunnel. It's classic.
That was really good, and I just love the fact that how you always made it like super narrow in an area and tight, because you got to think a cave's not gonna have like, oh, it's a hallway. It's gonna be like, oh, it's gonna get tight right here. Then there's a big cavern right next to it that may lead into some acid pits, and if you fall off the ledge, you fall into acid, you die.
Right, which is what kind of leads to the homogenous kind of, these are old dwarven ruins kind of dungeon. Like,
we played a lot of dwarven ruins.
We played a lot of dwarven ruins. A lot of times it's just because it's a lot easier to explain away some of the weird things that you're going to put in that dungeon, but in other ways, like, that's just kind of like what that story needs to have is like why is there magic stuff buried down deep in here? Dwarf did it.
Damn it.
Which is always like, we always have like I always think we have very small dungeons. We have like dungeons that are just long enough to like give you a little bit of a challenge, and then you get your prize, and then you can get out.
Yeah.
So like, is that more of a thing of you're always trying to keep the pace of the story, or is it more of a thing where dungeons are kind of difficult things to manage?
A little bit of both, I think, and it depends on really what your story is. Because, and it depends if you have a lot of free time in whatever campaign, you can do a big dungeon, but if you don't have a lot of free time and you're on the clock to save the city from a great terrible army coming to invade it, I mean, why do you need to go into a dungeon?
Exactly.
Unless there's like some type of magical thing to help you defeat whatever army. But I mean, that's kind of like a niche thing for a story or a key point. So I mean, you could work it like that.
As long as you find a good way to fit it in, meaningfully. Like, I don't know, someone's, castle could be like a dungeon.
Yeah.
Like their entire city is the dungeon.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Like maybe like
you're trying to.
That's what I wanted to do with the Dragon Ball campaign. Was just have an undead city.
Oh, that'd be cool. Like a fallen kingdom to where basically the entire thing is turned into this undead fortress, more or less. Yeah. So it's like one big.
Well, it was going to be like a straight up city with 4 sections in it and 4 bosses.
That'd be cool.
I really wanted to do that, but then we just kind of got busy doing other stuff.
Just flaked out on it.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that kind of thing, we've come up with, I guess, a term for it called Dungeon XP, to where instead of giving you XP per encounter like we would normally do, we kind of keep it all lumped together. And I think the main reason we do that is because we also like to give the idea of getting back your XP, getting back your health, getting back your spells, and all of your other abilities at level up. So the last thing you want to do is have someone going through a grueling dungeon, and right when they get to the boss, to go, oh, well, actually, I leveled up. Now I'm perfectly fine to go beat this guy's ass.
Yeah.
So instead, you get to save up all these points all at once and give them to them there, kind of like a reward for completing the dungeon.
Yeah, and I mean, that's more useful for smaller dungeons. But like on bigger dungeons where you're going in, you gotta like traverse through miles and miles of caverns. You have to rest at some point, and I mean, that's the thing. That's where do you cut the line between doing dungeon XP and doing resting XP.
Right.
So
I think a good Out of the Abyss campaign would be good for us.
Oh yeah, I'd love the shit out of it. I would totally make Nexus 2.0 and just make the rogue. What was it, Gloomstalker?
Yeah.
Because that's basically like a giant dungeon, like just the whole underscape.
Right.
Which I haven't read a lot on that, and I mean, I'm sure that's really good. But
yeah, I've read some bits, and you have to monitor like your food, like who's going to forage it, how much time you're going to spend searching for food, because you're running away from.
Need a lot of survival checks. A lot of survival. I imagine that in a dungeon campaign, you want a highly skilled.
Yeah, it was cool because they set up a skill set for a lot of different classes
in general
to contribute to
the
campaign.
I don't know, imagine a dwarf being very good at climbing something or making balance checks on ropes.
But he can dig you that hole. Or he can, like, hoist you up, like, or, like, help get you hoisted down.
there might be a lot of poison down there that he's he's equipped to deal with, or just he's a dwarf. He has natural stone sense. But the
kind of more or less template that I've started to go with dungeons, at least the way it's come up, like we were saying in the Flat World campaign. I always have the end goal, and then I start basing what would logically be around that. When you guys went down for the bow meld, which is I kind of mashed together a bunch of different things. There's a blood strike or something in 3.5 where basically it's like a giant dinosaur that can squirt acid, and I put I gave it a whole bunch of other templates to where basically what it is it's a thing that burrows through the earth and secretes acid to do it, and what happens is that acid will drive these different materials and minerals on its back to make basically this shell that's very valuable. So they were going down just to make a hide out of this bone meld, and the entire idea of this dungeon was that it was crisscrossed intersections of the tunnels that it had been burrowing. So that's what kind of made this maze, was that they were going through, they were basically following in its tracks directly. And so the idea was you have the mystery of them trying to figure out what this dungeon is, and once they figure out, oh, we're actually following its tracks, then they can kind of start to unravel that part. And then you have your conflicts from the environment, because this place is now, since it's basically the structural integrity of it's been fucked by this acid monster. They have sheer cliffs. They have rooms that are just adjacent to it that have been closed off that might have valuables in there, or they can punch their way through to. They would have some other monsters that also like being around acid or open holes and stuff like that.
If you were talking about, sorry to kind of cut you off, but if you were talking about it collapsing structures and stuff, wouldn't it necessarily have minor earthquakes in there as well?
It could be, yeah. You could always feel those tremors. You always have to worry about that, and that's also a good way to set up that thing might happen later. You step in, you feel a brief rumble, like a minor earthquake, and then it kind of settles away. And then later you can bring that back into play by having them walk through the tunnel, and then boom, they step through this. They accidentally step through the floor of this and starts collapsing the tunnel all around them.
And then you got your the moment from the Hobbit movies where they're in the goblin tunnels and they're all just collapsing on a bunch of stuff. Around. Mm-hmm. So you could have one of those moments.
And then you always capstone that with, for me, it's 2 things or 3 things. You give them their boss, give them some loot, and you give them their quick escape out.
Yeah, I think one of the main things I guess personally that I like to add for any dungeon, or I guess just most campaigns, is that I try to give each player a moment to contribute individually, so long as you can manage that with the amount of players that you have.
Yeah.
But so one guy's good at magic, throw something that he can figure out arcane wise, or the rogue can do something stealthy, or the warrior can do something fucking badass and kick a door down or some shit.
And I think that's probably easier to do in a bigger dungeon.
Yeah.
Because then you get more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, true. And but that way everyone kind of feels like they contributed and did something meaningful to get past the the problem.
Yeah.
Then there's 2 issues you run into when you're doing that. One, it's okay, well, all I have to do is identify this magic item, and they can figure out how to leave this room. That runs up natural 1. He doesn't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah.
Cool, you guys are stuck in this room, I guess.
Well, you gotta have identify stuff.
So then you have additional options to get out of the room too.
Right.
Doesn't work, we'll try to smash through the room.
Yeah, and then you have to figure
the lock.
Which is why I would say you always need to at least have 2 or 3 ways out. Always have I guess going off what you're saying, have the 3 ways. You could either have the smart way where the rogue can pick this or get through this grate and then open the door from the other side. Have the way the barbarian can just knock down the door, and also have the way where the smart guy can use his knowledge and understanding of how this dungeon works to solve it more or less the way that it was supposed to be solved. Because then the other issue that we run into, or I wouldn't say it's even an issue, but trying to plan for that, is we have a what was his name, Broly, where he doesn't have any of those skills.
He doesn't have anything.
He's like, oh, I wear lots of armor and I don't get hit. All right, well, we're trying to get through this tunnel. I wear lots of armor and don't get hit.
Yeah.
So everyone had to cater to my character for that one. But he was kind of useful at one part where like there's this thing that was like spitting arrows or something like that.
Oh yeah,
and he was able to kind of block it as they figured out the puzzle. Yeah.
Basically, just use this all as like human shield for
I was like a meat shield
for a fucking arrow trap. And like, oh, we'll try to figure this out. Ow! And then he's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna stand here like this. All right, ding, 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 ding. That was cool.
Yeah,
that was a good moment.
That was the way I contributed.
You did good.
Yeah. You did good, bro. You did good.
What are like a lot of different races and stuff you can find in dungeons and subterraneans?
That always varies on what dungeon you have. Like,
true.
That's the kind of thing people will kind of fall themselves into. Like, oh, we need to have myconids, we need to have Dwergar, we need to have zombies and other kinds of undead, maybe some black puddings. Like, because most dungeons you think about are underground, evil kind of places.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I mean, if you really think about it, maybe a guard barracks, or not even a guard barracks, like a jail, you're trying to bust out your friend. That can totally turn into a dungeon. You got to find the keys. You have to knock out this guard, stealth by him, do all these kinds of things. So really,
very Escape from Butcher Bay style.
Yeah, the ecology of a dungeon can always vary upon what the dungeon's theme would be.
Yeah,
and it's always better if you try to make it feel natural too. So like you're in the jail, you're probably not expecting to see like a mind flayer just rolling about unless it's. I guess it's kind of possible that just something kind of alien, So like maybe there's like a bunch of rats in the corner and they all just spring on you at once for no reason, or I
would say the last thing you want to do is thumb open the DMG and be like, or the monster manual and be like, well, that'd be cool. I want them to fight that. So you're sitting in the middle of this, deep diving cave adventure, and all of a sudden a rock, the giant eagle just comes swooping out of the top. It's like, why is that here? I don't know, figure it out.
You seem cool.
Yeah, that could be like a quest, just
to figure that out.
Yeah,
figure out why it's down there.
One theme of dungeon I was thinking about is we're going to be going into the future very soon.
Dun, dun, dun.
So what I was wanting to have happen is basically an apartment complex dungeon. Like the Raid style.
Yes.
If you've ever seen the Raid, that is...
Yes.
Or, I guess a more one that maybe people have seen, Judge Dredd. Or Dread.
Dread.
Yeah, I'm on board now. I know what you're talking about.
Dread. Those are like the same movies that were just accidentally made at the exact same time. But yeah, they're just trying to get through to one spot in this place.
There better be a boss battle at the top where I can kick them off the edge, and they're on a slow-mo, and it's all, poetic as they fall.
Dread, what's your snappy one-liner?
Big Pharma is actually going to be a company, so that might actually happen.
You go, Dread, what's your snappy one-liner?
Yeah. It's been a nice summer. I'll see you next fall.
Oh, God.
Damn, Cersei.
Oh, is this a spoiler for season 8?
I think I just ruined the video. But... we talked about the dungeons, and I feel like we're missing a part that kind of goes with that.
Yeah, like dungeons and what?
It's just on the...
Do you mean dragons?
Oh, let's talk about the dragons.
Yeah, maybe.